If this video appeared to you today, it is not by chance. Osho said, "When the disciple is ready, the truth finds him." And perhaps at this very moment, life has chosen to deliver you a reminder you've been ignoring for far too long, because deep down, you know. There's something in you that has always sought to understand human nature, not just that of others, but your own. There's a silent part within you that observes everything. The reactions, the pain, the masks. This part is ancient, wise and weary of illusions. It yearns for the truth, for hidden truths of human nature that Osho revealed, those that the world insists on hiding because they liberate, because they deprogram, because they awaken what was dormant. Do you feel the time has come to see beyond appearances, to understand why people do what they do, why you feel what you feel, and why there's a void that nothing fills, even when everything seems to be in order? This search isn't weakness, it's the call of consciousness. Osho said that the first step to awakening is recognizing illusion, and the greatest of these is believing that you are only what the world sees. Doubt you are the observer behind it all, the consciousness that witnesses the thoughts, the emotions, the chaos. Perhaps life has brought you here because you are ready to see what has always been before your eyes, but which only now in silence begins to reveal itself. The hidden truths of human nature are not concepts, they are mirrors. Each one reveals a layer of what you call self. Osho taught that when a person looks at themselves sincerely, they stop searching for culprits and begin to free themselves. And it is at this point that transformation begins, the moment the mask falls, and the real being, stripped of pretensions, begins to breathe for the first time. Humanity lives in constant conflict. Everyone pretends to know who they are, but few have the courage to look within. Osho said that the mind is a great actress, always playing roles, the strong, the wise, the good, the spiritual. But behind all these characters, there is something that simply observes, and that is your essence. You feel this, don't you? You feel that there is something greater than your fears, greater than the ego that wants to control everything, greater than the noise of the world. It is this awareness that has brought you here. These 17 hidden truths. These aren't pretty theories to be heard and forgotten, they are keys. Each one opens a door you closed when you learned to protect yourself, to please, to hide your pain. Each one reveals what lies behind the anger, the guilt, the loneliness, the desire to be accepted. And when you understand this, nothing will manipulate you anymore. Not fear, not the opinions of others, not the stories you tell yourself. Because Osho said, the truth sets you free, but first it destroys the lies you call life. And maybe that's why your heart is racing right now, even in silence. It's your body recognizing that something important is about to happen. You're about to remember who you are. To realize that everything that caused you pain was just a mirror of human unconsciousness, yours and others. That all judgment, all need for control is just fear in disguise. And that awakening begins when you stop fighting what is and start observing what has always been. Osho said that the human being is a mystery not to be solved, but to be lived. And living the mystery requires presence. It requires stopping, breathing, and allowing life to reveal what it has always tried to show you. Each truth you hear here is like a spark, small, but capable of igniting everything that is not real. And as these truths are revealed, you will notice something subtle, the weight lifting, the noise diminishing, the mind becoming silent, not because someone convinced you, but because something inside you finally understood. So, if something inside you is saying stay, trust it. It's not the algorithm, it's not chance, it's synchronicity. It's life answering a request you might not even remember making. Stay with me until the end, because the ultimate truth is the one that awakens most. It won't just be heard, it will be felt. And when it arrives, you'll understand why Osho's silence spoke louder than 1,000 words. Before we dive into the first truths, I want you to do something simple, but deeply symbolic. Write here in the comments, "I choose to awaken." This phrase isn't just a digital gesture, it's an energetic statement. It's you saying to the universe, I am ready to see what has always been before me. So, before you continue, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath. Feel the air rush in. What you're about to hear isn't entertainment, it's a mirror. It's the part of you that was silenced by the world's rush, speaking again. If something inside you is resonating, if this video arrived at a time when you needed to hear these words, don't let it go unnoticed. Click on like, not only to help the channel, but to signal to your own mind that you want to continue expanding. This simple gesture sends an internal message: I value the truth. And if you feel you are ready to take this journey, if you want to understand in depth the 17 hidden truths of human nature that Osho revealed, subscribe to the channel right now. This way, each new teaching will find you at the right time, when your energy is ready for the next revelation. Have you ever noticed how silence is more disturbing than 1,000 words? It's curious how, when you decide to retreat, when you finally choose peace, the world seems to conspire to provoke you even more. As if everyone around you feels the need to test your limits, to elicit a reaction from you, to prove that you're not yet completely free, and perhaps in fact you aren't. Not yet, because human nature has deep layers, and Osho said that the greatest challenge facing human beings is to endure their own silence. When you become silent, the noise of your mind becomes deafening, and it is at that moment that the truth begins to emerge. There's a part of you that yearns for peace, but there's another that fears it, because peace requires surrender, and surrender means losing control, and the mind hates that. It wants answers, it wants explanations, it wants to be right. But Osho said that truth isn't logical, it's lived, and when you begin to live it, something inside you unravels. The mask falls, the persona falters, and what remains is what has always been there: the silent observer, the one who witnesses the play of life without getting lost in it. How many times have you tried to explain who you are, what you feel, what you seek, and still no one truly understood you? Perhaps because the world doesn't know how to hear what cannot be said. Human beings have learned to communicate through their minds, but have forgotten how to listen through their souls. And that's why silence has become so threatening. When you don't react, you don't fuel the drama. When you don't explain, you dismantle the power others think they have over you. And that bothers you, because suddenly the game changes. Osho said, people aren't afraid of losing control over you. They're afraid of losing the power they have when you react. And that's exactly what happens when you choose peace. The world reacts. People mistake serenity for coldness, trust your predictability, and lose their way when you decide to simply observe. But that's where true freedom begins. Because nothing is more powerful than the individual who no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. Have you ever felt this? That feeling of being tired of justifying every choice, every silence, every limit? It's as if there's a weariness of always being others' safe haven while you sink into emotional tides no one notices. This is one of the deepest pains of the modern soul, being surrounded by people but feeling invisible. And Osho called it the golden prison. You look fine to the world, but inside, you're in pieces. And the worst part is that, somewhere along the way, you learn to smile anyway, to disguise your exhaustion, to pretend everything's fine just to maintain harmony. But harmony is not the absence of external conflict. It is the presence of internal awareness. When you understand this, you begin to free yourself. Osho said that silence is not an escape. It is the space where truth flourishes. And perhaps that is why so many people avoid silence, because it is in it that they find themselves, and the encounter with oneself is the most feared of all. Silence forces you to look at what you have been ignoring: the wounds, the frustrations, the unfulfilled desires, the repressed feelings. It doesn't give you quick answers, but it offers you clarity. And clarity hurts before it liberates. Do you notice how the world values noise? Haste has become a virtue. Distraction has become anesthesia. We're always running, talking, reacting, all to avoid feeling. But Osho said that feeling is the only way to truly live. And perhaps that's why you're here, because something inside you is tired of running away. You want to understand human nature not out of curiosity, but out of necessity. You want to understand why people contradict themselves, why they love and hurt in equal measure, why they desire freedom, but live trapped in patterns that destroy them. These are the truths Osho revealed, truths the modern world tries to drown out with distractions, but which continue to whisper in your mind when everything else is silent. The truth is that human beings seek love, but fear vulnerability. They seek to be understood, but wear masks to hide. They want to be free, but fear the emptiness that freedom brings. And this contradiction is the essence of human nature. When you understand this, anger transforms into compassion, judgment dissolves, and the need to control everything loses its meaning. But be careful. Understanding these truths is not an intellectual exercise, it's a process of detachment. It's about observing yourself reacting, noticing yourself judging, and instead of punishing yourself, simply breathing and observing again. Osho said, "The mind tries to change what is, consciousness simply witnesses, and it's this witnessing that sets you free." So, before we move on to the next revelations, I want to leave you with a question that Osho repeated in his speeches. Can you be silent for just 1 minute without wanting to change anything? Perhaps this is the first hidden truth of human nature, the inability to be present with what is. And if you feel this moment is touching you in any way, write just one sentence in the comments. I choose conscious silence. The truth is that human beings live in constant conflict between what they show and what they feel. You know this because you feel this duality every day, even if silently. There's a part of you that wants to be true, authentic, free. But there's another, trained since childhood, that fears disappointment, that seeks approval, that molds itself to fit in. Osho said that society has taught you to be a mask, and the more you try to please, the further you distance yourself from your essence. And that's why so many people live tired, even when they seem to have it all. Because the effort to sustain a version of yourself is the greatest energy thief there is. Think for a moment. How many times have you said yes when you meant no? How many times have you silenced what you really felt to avoid conflict? How many times have you put yourself on the back burner, believing that this was maturity, kindness, love? Osho called this self-abandonment the unconscious habit of betraying yourself a little every day in the name of harmony. But what kind of harmony is this if it costs you your peace? What kind of love is this if to maintain it, you have to cease to exist? Humans have learned to survive by pleasing others, and they call it empathy. But the price of this distorted empathy is high. It empties the spirit and transforms the soul into an obedient shadow. The suffering you feel doesn't come from what others do, but from what you allow. Osho said, "No one can hurt you without your consent." At first glance, this phrase seems harsh, but it reveals the power you've forgotten, because all emotional pain stems from a disconnect with your inner truth. When you live to please, others begin to define who you are, and this creates an invisible prison. You only feel at peace when you're accepted, and you fall apart when you're rejected. And the cruelest thing is that, to remain accepted, you dim your light, muffle your voice, and give up space. Until one day, without realizing it, you no longer know what you truly want. Perhaps you've become the emergency button in other people's lives, the one everyone turns to when they need help, but almost no one asks if they're okay. You offer help, a shoulder to cry on, comfort, presence, and for a while, this makes you feel useful. But deep down, there's a growing emptiness, because giving without awareness is losing yourself. Limitless availability is the same as losing yourself. And that's where the fatigue that doesn't go away, even after sleep, arises. It's an existential exhaustion. The body rests, but the soul remains exhausted. Osho said that true compassion isn't about giving yourself to exhaustion, but about being whole when you decide to give yourself. The greatest human pain isn't rejection, it's self-forgetfulness. It's living so much for the world that the world itself becomes more real than your inner self. You get used to superficiality and call it coexistence. You get used to noise and call it routine. You get used to absence and call it independence. Until one day, without realizing it, you find yourself smiling in photos that no longer have meaning, participating in conversations that don't nourish you, sustaining relationships that drain more than they nourish. And yet, you tell yourself it's okay, because the fear of loneliness speaks louder than the desire for truth. But Osho said, it's better to be alone in authenticity than surrounded by falsehood. Loneliness is frightening because you confuse being alone with being empty. But they're opposites. Being alone is being full of yourself. It's when the noise stops and you start listening to yourself again. And maybe that's why loneliness hurts so much at first. It's not the lack of others, it's the discomfort of finding yourself again. Because deep down, there's a voice you've been silencing for years. It knows what you want, it knows what you feel, it knows what needs to go. But you silence it with excuses. It's not the right time. It'll pass. It's just a phase. Osho said that the human mind is a great storyteller, and almost all of them are lies that serve to postpone awakening. You tell yourself that you need to be strong, when in reality you're just afraid to be honest. Strength isn't enduring the unbearable. Strength is looking at what hurts and saying, I don't need to live like this anymore. And this simple yet powerful phrase is the beginning of all liberation. Suffering at its core is a teacher in disguise. It exists to remind you that you have strayed from your own truth. And that's why Osho said that suffering is necessary until you understand the message. After that, it becomes useless. Pain is the bell that awakens the seeker. And the seeker is the one who refuses to continue living in the comfortable lie of the mask. Perhaps you've realized that no matter how hard you try, you can never please everyone. There will always be someone dissatisfied. There will always be an unmet expectation. And this is liberating, because when you understand that there is no victory in trying to be perfect for the world, the return to yourself begins. True spirituality isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before you needed to please. Osho said that authenticity is revolutionary. Being true in a world of appearances is an act of spiritual courage, and that's exactly what you're beginning to do now. Break the pact with inner falsehood. This hurts, yes, because the mind resists. It will tell you it's selfishness, coldness, and dangerous. But make no mistake, the real danger is continuing to be what they expect and never discovering who you are. And if, while listening to these words, something inside you resonated, that feeling of, this is what I needed to hear, don't ignore it. This is consciousness awakening, asking for space, asking for silence. So write just one sentence in the comments as a commitment to yourself. I choose to remember who I am. Osho said that truth doesn't need to be learned, it needs to be remembered. And that's exactly what these 17 truths do. They don't bring anything new. They simply remove what prevents you from seeing what's always been there. The human mind loves to complicate things, invent stories, and create theories. But truth is simple, silent, and direct. And for that very reason, it's frightening. When you hear it, you feel the weight of everything hidden beneath justifications and fears. So listen with your heart, not your mind. Each truth Osho revealed is a doorway inward, a break from the old pattern, a reminder of who you truly are. The first hidden truth of human nature is this: suffering is resistance to what is. Everything you try to control, correct, or avoid turns into pain. Osho said that suffering is the friction between life and the desire for it to be different. The mind wants to interfere in everything, but consciousness only observes. When you stop fighting what happens, you discover that what hurt was just your attempt not to feel. The second truth: love is born of silence, not of need. Osho said that true love is the perfume of freedom. In other words, when you love from lack, what you call love is just fear disguised as attachment. Real love doesn't seek to possess, it seeks to allow. And that's why it's so rare, because most people want someone to fill the void that only self-knowledge can touch. The third truth: the mind wants control, the heart wants surrender. And that's why love and the mind are at war. Osho said that control is the most disguised form of fear. The more you try to guarantee the future, the further you become from presence. And presence is the only place where life happens. The fourth truth: fear is faith inverted. You believe so much in the possibility of the worst that you begin to feed it with your own energy. Osho said that the mind creates monsters and then becomes frightened by them. When you observe fear without running away, it loses its power. Because fear is not something to be overcome, it is something to be understood. The fifth truth: no one can hurt you without your permission. Osho said that others only touch what is still wounded in you. When the wound heals, words lose their power. This is true emotional freedom. When you understand that other people's behavior speaks more about their unconsciousness than about your worth. The sixth truth: guilt is the glue that holds suffering together. The mind convinces you that feeling guilty is a sign of kindness, but Osho said that guilt is a prison built of memories. When you forgive yourself, you're not justifying the mistake. You're freeing your consciousness from repetition. The seventh truth: silence is the cradle of wisdom. Everything true is born of silence. The answers you seek never come from noise, but from the space between one thought and another. Osho said that meditation is simply sitting in silence and allowing truth to reveal itself. The eighth truth: the ego is a reflection of the fear of disappearing. It is the identity you created to survive. But Osho said that the more the ego tries to exist, the more it suffers. because life is always changing, and what clings to what changes inevitably shatters. The ninth truth: desire is the mind's attempt to fill emptiness with movement. You chase something, achieve it, and the emptiness returns. Osho said that emptiness is not a problem. It is the space where the being expands. Only emptiness can contain the whole. The 10th truth: self-love is the beginning of spirituality. Osho said that no one can truly love without first loving themselves deeply. When you reject yourself, you seek acceptance in all the wrong places. When you embrace yourself, the love of others ceases to be a necessity and becomes a choice. The 11th truth: anger is an unheard cry of pain. Osho said that all anger is masked sadness. When you look at your anger with compassion, you discover the fragility it tries to hide, and by recognizing this, the anger dissolves. The 12th truth: loneliness is not a punishment, it's an invitation. Life takes you away from certain places so you can listen to yourself. Osho said that those who don't learn to be alone live begging for attention. When you make peace with your own company, solitude becomes a temple. The 13th truth: the past is a shadow that only lives if you keep looking back. Osho said that the past is a dream that has already ended, but that the mind insists on reliving. Each time you repeat it, you steal energy from the present, and it is in the present that the power to recreate everything resides. The 14th truth: truth hurts before it frees. Osho said that truth first destroys the lies on which you've built your life, and that's why many run away from it. But if you have the courage to go through the pain of lucidity, you'll find on the other side something no one can take away from you: the peace that comes from authenticity. The 15th truth: energy follows focus. Whatever you feed with attention grows. Osho said the mind is a distracted gardener. It plants flowers and weeds in the same soil. Awakening is learning to choose what to water. The 16th truth: everything that irritates you in others is a reflection of what you haven't yet healed within yourself. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, but also one of the most liberating. Osho said that the other is always a mirror, and that relationships are the most fertile ground for self-knowledge. And the 17th truth: when you become conscious, the world ceases to dominate you and begins to reveal you. Osho said that life is not against you, it is a mirror of your level of consciousness. The more awake you are, the more the universe becomes an ally. These are the hidden truths Osho revealed about human nature, simple yet capable of turning your vision inside out. Each is a reminder that nothing needs to be added to your essence, only removed. Suffering, fear, attachment, guilt, all are temporary clouds covering the sky of consciousness. And when these clouds dissipate, what remains is the living silence of presence. But understand, hearing these truths is not the same as living them. The mind will try to agree and forget, because the mind wants to remain comfortable. So keep the one that touched you most, the one that made your heart beat differently, and let it work within you. And if one of them awakened something profound, write just one sentence in the comments as a reminder to yourself: I choose to live consciously. Osho said, you don't need to change the world. Just stop fighting it. And perhaps this is one of the most challenging phrases anyone can hear, because the human mind has been trained to believe that peace is the result of control. From an early age, we've been taught that being strong means resisting, that being wise means foreseeing, that being good means enduring. But true awakening begins when you realize that all this resistance is the very source of suffering. The world isn't hurting you, it's simply showing you where you still fight against the natural flow of existence. The mind is the battlefield, and consciousness is the battlefield of peace. Everything that happens outside is a reflection of what happens within. Have you ever noticed how when you're at peace, what once irritated you simply doesn't seem to reach you? But when you're restless, any word, any gesture, any silence feels like a provocation. Osho said that nothing has the power to hurt you if you don't identify with what hurts, and that's where the turning point lies. Because from the moment you understand that everything that shakes you is merely revealing something that hasn't yet been healed, the game changes. The world stops being an enemy and becomes a master. You begin to see that difficult situations are not punishments but mirrors. Each person who crosses your path brings a lesson disguised as conflict. And when you stop reacting, you begin to see what you couldn't see before. Osho said that the mind is reactive because it lives in time, always stuck in the past or anticipating the future. But consciousness lives in the present, and in the present, There is no struggle, only observation. The secret is not to protect yourself from chaos, but to observe it without being swept away by it. The mind wants to solve everything now, wants answers, wants guarantees, wants to predict the next move. It fears the unpredictable. But Osho said that life is the unpredictable in its purest form, and that's why the mind suffers. It wants security in a universe that knows only movement. Consciousness, on the other hand, flows. It doesn't try to understand the river, it becomes the river. And it's this transition from mind to consciousness that Osho called the inner revolution, when you stop trying to control the external and start observing the internal. True change doesn't happen when you try to fix people, but when you realize there's nothing to fix, only understanding. Osho said that understanding dissolves conflict. And when there's understanding, forgiveness happens naturally. Not because you've decided to be superior, but because you finally understand that no one hurt you. It was just unconscious consciousnesses reacting to what they didn't understand. You've done this many times too. Everyone has. Awakening begins when you stop pointing and start seeing. And here's the most liberating part. When you stop fighting what is, life begins to conspire in your favor. Osho said that the universe is like a mirror. It returns exactly the state you emit. When there is tension, the reflection is distorted. When there is surrender, the reflection aligns. It's not the world that needs to change, it's the lens through which you see it. And that lens is the conditioned mind, shaped by memories, fears, and desires. As long as it dominates your gaze, you will remain trapped in the same cycle of pain and reaction. But when consciousness takes the place of the mind, reality expands. You begin to realize that the other is not an enemy, that the problem is not out there, and that true freedom does not depend on anything external. It is an internal state of stillness, even in the midst of chaos. Osho said that a truly wise person can be in the midst of a storm and still remain silent within. This is not indifference, it is presence. The mind analyzes, judges, and reacts. Consciousness observes, accepts, and transforms. This is the paradigm shift, realizing that you are not the storm, but the sky that contains it. Everything that passes, people, situations, emotions, are clouds in transit. And when you understand this, life ceases to be a battlefield and becomes a learning ground. You don't need to defend yourself, just be present. Osho said, "The mind lives by comparison. Consciousness lives by contemplation." This phrase sums up the leap of understanding. When you contemplate, there is no guilt because there is no judgment. You begin to see yourself and others with eyes of compassion, not condemnation. And it's important to understand that this liberation doesn't mean withdrawing from the world. It means participating in it without losing yourself. Osho never spoke of escape. He spoke of presence, being in the world but not of the world, acting when necessary, but acting from silence, not anxiety. This is the difference between the mind and consciousness. The mind reacts, consciousness responds. One comes from fear, the other from love. Do you notice how everything transforms when you change your perspective? The same scenario, the same person, the same situation, but with a new perspective. Peace doesn't come when everything around you changes. It comes when your gaze is purified. And this is the power Osho was trying to reveal. The power of being a witness, of observing your own mind, of recognizing patterns, of not identifying with them. Consciousness doesn't fight the darkness. It simply turns on the light. And perhaps now, as you hear these words, something inside you is feeling this subtle shift, as if an old part is surrendering and a new one is emerging. This is how awakening begins, silent but irreversible. Life remains the same, but you change your way of being in it. And from that moment on, nothing dominates you anymore, because nothing needs to be controlled. If this makes sense to you, if somehow this change is happening inside you, write a sentence in the comments as a reminder to yourself. I choose to live in presence. Now that you understand the shift Osho proposed, this transition from mind to awareness, from struggle to observation, it's time to transform that understanding into experience, because knowledge without practice becomes just another pretty idea lost in the flow of thoughts. And Osho always warned, true learning begins when you live the truth, not when you simply agree with it. Therefore, what follows is a simple but profoundly transformative experiment. I call it Conscious Silence Challenge. For the next 24 hours, Your only mission will be observe before reacting. This means that faced with any situation, a criticism, a demand, a noise, something unexpected, you will pause. That's all. You will breathe deeply and feel what's happening inside you. Your mind will want to respond, justify, explain, defend itself. It's the automatic impulse that comes from years of conditioning, but you won't obey this impulse. Instead, you will observe. You will witness the internal movement without identifying with it. And in that instant, something new begins to emerge. The space between you and the reaction. Osho said that this space is the cradle of freedom. When you begin to observe, you stop being a hostage to what you feel and become the observer of feeling. And it is in this small interval between stimulus and response that the power of consciousness awakens. It is in this space that peace is established. And it may seem too simple, but simplicity is what transforms the most, because it is in simplicity that truth hides. Throughout the day, you'll notice that life constantly offers you opportunities to practice silence. When someone says something that would normally irritate you, notice your body reacting, your heart racing, your stomach tightening, your mind formulating responses. Instead of acting, breathe. Osho said, before responding, turn inward, breathe and observe. The act of conscious breathing is like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly you see what was once only shadow, and what was automatic becomes a choice. You'll notice how your mind tries to drag you back into the old pattern. It will tell you that you need to take a stand, that you'll appear weak, that you'll be disrespected. It will create 1,000 stories to justify your reaction. But remember, you are not the mind. You are the space that perceives the mind. This distinction is the beginning of awakening. Osho said that the wise man is the one who can observe his own anger without becoming angry, observe fear without becoming fearful, look at pain without becoming a victim. And this practice, conscious silence, is the tool for developing this living wisdom. Make this a spiritual experiment, not as a challenge to self-control, but as a curious observation of your own humanity. See what happens when you don't fuel the argument, when you don't defend yourself, when you simply become present. It's uncomfortable at first, because the mind loses the function it believes it has, to react, to argue, to win. But the more you observe without reacting, the more the ego dissolves, and what remains is being, simple, calm, present. You'll realize that the world doesn't fall apart when you don't react. People may even find it strange, because they were used to your old response pattern. But silence will begin to educate the environment. The energy changes. Osho said that silence is contagious. It creates a vibration that slows down even the most agitated hearts. When you choose peace, you not only change your internal state, you change the energy field around you. This 24-hour exercise is in fact a mirror. It will show you where you're still lost, where you still need to be right, where you still feel the need for approval. And there's nothing wrong with that. The practice serves precisely to reveal what still needs to be illuminated. Therefore, perfection isn't expected. Awareness isn't about success, it's about presence. Each time you realize you've reacted, breathe and return. This return is true progress. Osho said that silence is the perfume of the awakened being. And that's why he insisted so much on observation. When you observe, time seems to slow down. What once dominated you now passes through you without leaving a scar. Anger dissolves, fear loses its power, anxiety transforms into attention. It's as if you begin to live at a different pace, a more real pace, more aligned with the flow of existence. And if you want to go even deeper, add a small ritual throughout the day. Every time you feel the urge to react, touch your chest with your hand and repeat mentally, "I choose my peace." This phrase isn't just an affirmation, it's an anchor. It brings you back to the now, to the point where nothing threatens you because nothing needs to be defended. When you say, "I choose my peace," the universe understands that you are ready to let go of the internal war. Don't underestimate the power of this simple act. Osho said that great awakenings happen in small, silent, and seemingly banal gestures. And that's what this challenge represents, the beginning of a new way of existing, less reactive, more conscious, more real. With each pause, you'll feel the difference. Your body relaxes, your mind slows down, your heart expands. You begin to realize that life doesn't require so much effort, just presence. So, try this experiment. Allow yourself to live a whole day in inner silence, without trying to control, without trying to prove, without trying to win. Just observe. And at the end of these 24 hours, notice what has changed. Perhaps the world is the same, but you will no longer be the same. And if you feel this change happening, if you feel this lightness, this inner space opening, write in the comments, as a seal of your conscious choice, I choose my peace. These 17 truths were not meant to be merely heard, but lived. They are not spiritual concepts to memorize. They are keys to unlock what has been locked within you. When you begin to witness your own nature, something changes irreversibly. What was once confusion transforms into clarity. What was pain reveals itself as learning. What seemed like the end becomes the beginning of a new consciousness. This is the moment you realize that awakening is not a destination, but a state, and that each choice of presence is a silent rebirth. And if this journey resonated with you, if at any point you saw yourself in these words, please leave a like now. This isn't just a gesture of support, it's the digital world's way of understanding that this type of content needs to reach more people ready to awaken, just like you. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss this next part. Activate the bell so that the flow of life itself brings you here at the right time. The next video is already appearing on the screen, and it is a direct continuation of this journey. Click now and come with me to understand the power of deep silence. Because the path of awakening doesn't end, it only deepens.